Welcome. Well, this year marks a century of Indian cinema. Today, we'll be taking a look at the work of director Satyajit Ray. He's been described as one of the most influential directors in world cinema, with French New Wave director François Truffaut and also American director Martin Scorsese crediting him as an inspiration. Now, one of Satyajit Ray's best-known films, The Big City, has been re-released here in Britain, and it focuses on a conservative housewife in Calcutta who gets a job. Let's take a look.
Wanted a smart and attractive young woman to serve as a sales girl in a respectable firm.
What's wrong with using a little lipstick? You put red here, why not here?
Well, with me is Chiara Maragnon from the film website Goopy and Professor Chandak Sengupta from Birkbeck College here in London. He's writing a biography on Satyajit Ray. Also with us in Calcutta, Amit Chowdhury, an author and a big fan of Ray's work. A very warm welcome to you all here on Impact. I'm going to start with you, Chandak. You are writing a biography of Satyajit Ray. I mean, what attracted you to his work and him and to make this your big project?
Well, the one thing that really attracted me from the very beginning was his sheer versatility, and also the fact that you can't really understand even his films without knowing a lot about his historical, social, cultural, and even familial contexts. And that really hadn't been done. There are lots of biographies about him, but very few that you can call genuinely culturally informed. And because of the place where I was born and because of the education I had a natural entry point into that very complicated context. And I loved his films because they are just so diverse. They're not just, stories. They're also analytical works on Indian society, history, and culture.
Chiara, I mean, for somebody who perhaps hasn't seen one of those great films, what is it that you say it has going for it to attract people to go and see it?
Well, for us in Movie, we are trying to show his films because, well, he's one of the top filmmakers of all time, one of the few masters, and that's because he manages to create something very universal through very little means and very little stories. So, I mean, I think his films, even if they have a completely different meaning for Indian society, they are very accessible for Western society. So, I mean, everyone should go through the experience of watch at least the Apu Trilogy once in her life. Yeah.
Amit, you're listening in from Calcutta. Of course, you've written extensively about Calcutta, and The Big City was set in Calcutta, the clip we've just shown. I mean, what do you see as having relevance from the way he shows life in Calcutta?
Well, Mahanagar, The Big City, which you refer to, is certainly one of the great films about Calcutta, but then he has a few others which he made in his middle period when Calcutta was a kind of politically turbulent city going through these shifts in politics towards radical politics. So these are films like The Adversary, Pratidwandi. And he just captures what a vibrant city it is, even when it is in a state of exacerbation. I think this is reflected in something he said once when he was asked about why he made films about Calcutta. And he said, should I be making films about Geneva? And I think he was echoing Harry Limes in The Third Man when he said, Switzerland produced the cuckoo clock. Look at what happened after all the murders in Italy. They produced the Renaissance. There was some kind of sense that turbulence can, be interesting, and I think he captures that in his Calcutta films.
And Amit, I mean, he's not just viewed as being a great Indian director, he's being viewed as being a great world director, one of the world's greatest. Why?
Well, for me, I just spoke about turbulence, but for me, it's to do with his enshrining of the ordinary, of the common commonplace of the everyday. This is what struck me as a young viewer and as a writer to be first and foremost about Satyajit Ray. Even in the 40s, when he was a man who was part of, who had started India's first film society in Calcutta, and was fed up of the mythological films about kind of epics that were being shown in India. Even then he had said the Indian filmmaker just has to look around him, he has to open his eyes and his ears. And from his films you get the sense of a person who has opened his eyes and ears and looked and found great significance at things we usually see, but which he sort of sees again in quite a unique way.
Chandak, you were nodding. I mean, did he sort of identify things that you'd notice about your life?
Yes, definitely. For example, this film that Amit just mentioned, The Adversary, it's about a young man growing up in Calcutta, a city where, there's not only a lot of political turbulence, but there's also a lot of economic uncertainty facing middle-class children, and jobs are almost impossible to find, and so on and so forth. And whenever I see that film, I see it as my story. And I always say that if I had to choose one film to take to a desert island, that would be The Adversary by Satyajit Ray, even though it is not really one of his most famous films, but it's about me, although it was made, without any knowledge of my personal circumstances.
Chiara, I mean, when people think of Indian film, perhaps they think of Bollywood. I mean, are there any parallels, any connections between what we see from Rai and the Bollywood that everyone's familiar with now as representing Indian film, that the singing and the dancing? This is so different.
Well, for me, yeah, it's like two different things completely. What Bollywood represents is more like a spectacle, and what Satyajit Ray, I mean, his whole body of work to me feels like more close to life through a cinematic experience than anything else I can think of.
Amit, I mean, parallels with what's coming out of India today?
Well, can I just add something to the Bollywood question? Certainly Bollywood is very different from Satyajit Ray, but filmmakers in Bollywood, the great sort of sensibilities within Bollywood, like Gurudat, was certainly changed by watching Ray, and it reflects in the kind of cinema they made. And even today, one of the most interesting filmmakers in Bollywood of independent films, Anurag Kashyap, had a similar turn and epiphany in his filmmaking when he saw Vittoria de Sica's Bicycle Thieves, just as Ray had many decades ago. That's what set him off on his quest in making films.
So his legacy continues. There's very much a legacy that remains, Amit. Briefly.
I think, yeah.
Chiara, what sort of legacy do you perceive in what Ray has left us?
Well, I think there are many filmmakers, not only in India but in the rest of the world, very influenced by his work. We could talk about, I don't know, Abbas Kiarostami and his whole range of films in Iran, or what the Dardenne brothers are doing in Europe.
Chandak, just final word, what sort of legacy do you see him as having left? I mean, you're examining his entire life and his entire work.
Yes, that's actually a very difficult question, because when I look at today's Bengali cinema, I don't see a whole lot of direct influence. His films are regarded as classics, they're the gold standard, people, love them, and yet you don't see filmmakers really revitalizing the tradition from which Ray came in ways that he might have approved of. However, there are all kinds of echoes of his way of writing dialogue, camera angles, and so on. But if you ask me to identify clear-cut legacies that this filmmaker is influenced by Satyajit Ray, then I would find it very hard, because there aren't that many clear instances that I can see.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people have been inspired to go and watch some of his archive of work. Thank you very much to all three of you, Chandak Sen Gupta, Chiara Maranyan and Amit Chowdhury in Calcutta. Thank you to you all.